I want to spend a little time just going over what the natural sciences essay is going to be about. Now, first of all, keep in mind that as we're going through this process, we're introducing you to APA documentation. That's something you're going to need to do in all future classes, especially any science-based courses. So MLA kind of covers the humanities side of things. And when you're doing writing and research in any science-based course, then you're using APA instead. So we're going to take what we know so far about documentation and then modify it in order to get into an APA style, which will be used in any of your classes that you're taking for any science-related degree, your AS degree, your VS degree, and every student, when they're in their first 2 years, are going to be using both MLA and APA, depending on what kind of class they're taking. So it's important to be familiar with both. Obviously, nobody's an expert at APA in just one semester after writing one or two papers. That's why it's important that you get your work checked with a tutor and always have your work examined, maybe even showing it to your instructors so that you can know for sure that you're doing it right and you're not incidentally or accidentally plagiarizing by having bad documentation. Now, for the natural sciences essay, you're going to write an essay that is 500 words, just like that humanities essay. That's 500 words from introduction to conclusion. You don't have to delete or take out word count for documentation. The essay has to be 4 paragraphs in length, and that's demonstrated here in our outline assignment, which is coming in the future, not right away. First, we're determining our topic and things like that. But the outline really shows you what you're going to be developing in each section of the essay. So that's why I wanted it to use the outline for this introductory video. So this paper will have an introduction paragraph, 2 body paragraphs, and then a conclusion paragraph at the end. There's going to be a references page for an APA style, and on your eventual paper, that references page is going to have a minimum of 2 different sources. One of those sources has to be from the college database, so that is a requirement for this one. The other one doesn't have to come from the database, but it still has to be from an expert source if you use the web. It's a good idea to get all websites checked before you actually use them. Now, the reason we're jumping into the database for this one as a requirement is because in your other college courses, it's going to be very common, especially in a science-based course, that you have to use the database because they want to make sure you're using the best resources, the best expert sources possible. And by taking it from the database, then your instructors know that this content is very likely going to be safe for you to use. It's going to be backed by research. If they're asking you to use things like academic journals, then it's been checked and written by experts. So the database really is the best place to go for college research. And we want to just make sure that you are accustomed to using it. You really need to get used to it, get good at it, be really familiar with the database. But in the event that it's still a problem and you're struggling with it, don't forget we do have research assistance or tutoring. Okay, and that's always a great place to go if you're not able to find what you need out of the database. So what this paper is going to do eventually is first you're going to choose a natural science-based topic. So this is an environmental paper. You have to talk about something that's impacting the environment in some way. But when you choose your environment topic, you need to make sure that you don't pick something and discuss it in scope of the entire world, because the environment is different in different parts of the world. So you don't want worldwide data when you talk about an environmental issue. If you're having a general conversation with someone, sure. But if you're going to be more accurate about your data, you need to narrow that down to a specific region. So for example, in the sample paper, this sample paper is about this concept of coastal habitats. And by developing these offshore habitats, these mangroves and other naturally developing, these naturally developing colonies, if you will, outside of the shoreline of Florida or Tampa Bay specifically for this instance, it helps reduce things like sea level rise, okay, which is a result of climate change. So again, I'm not going to talk about coastal habitats worldwide and the data and the numbers on coastal habitats worldwide. I want to talk about what the state of coastal habitats are just outside of one region, in this case, Tampa Bay. So make sure you narrow the scope of your topic, first of all, and then you can begin by reading a little bit about it. So the first paragraph summarizes an article about the coastal habitats in Tampa Bay, giving some information about it. You don't have to put data in this introductory section, although this student did. This is a student sample. You can, but you have to be careful that you don't end up repeating this data later on, because then obviously your paper is becoming repetitive. It might be a good idea to just save the data for your body paragraphs for a stronger presentation, because you can see here, the student already did that. They have their data here, and then it appears down here again, which is a negative for the paper. So for this student paper, this being an outline, obviously they would go on to edit this before doing a rough draft. I would tell this student, you probably want to take this stuff out of the introduction and save it for where it's really going to be important, which is as evidence in your body sections. So first, you're going to summarize basically the big idea of your topic. What's going on in this case with coastal habitats? What's happening to Tampa Bay as a result? We're not going to get overly specific, but we want to introduce the audience to the topic, especially if the audience may not know anything about coastal habitats at all. Then this introduction is going to be capped with a thesis statement at the end that talks about the problem and then potentially a solution. Now, this is kind of a paper that does a negative and a positive, if you will. In this case, for example, problem and then solution. But it doesn't necessarily have to be solution based. Sometimes there is no solution for an issue, or we haven't found that solution yet. So we could propose ideas that may help in the future. We could also talk about things that are naturally improving as a result. Not everything in nature is a problem solution based situation. Sometimes trends just go up and down in nature. For instance, if you're talking about an endangered species, it could be that at one point in history or with 10 years ago, that species was endangered. But if we look at the number of, example, manatees today, it has gone up. Why? We didn't do anything special, but for whatever reason, and we can't seem to find it in the research, but the trend is improving, which is a great thing. Okay. We could also talk about, if we wanted to, ways to keep that improved trend going. But the idea being that the two sides of the paper are a negative and a positive. For most people, that tends to be a problem and solution, and that's totally fine. But if your topic goes outside of that mold, that's okay too, as long as you've got a negative and a positive discussion for your two body paragraphs. So this body paragraph, the first body paragraph, is going to be that disturbing idea or that problem situation. And then you're going to back that with data. So in this case, the student is going to need to do more research, because if you tell me that coastal habitats are going to be wiped out, I don't have now any numbers on that. You need to prove that. And you're not going to prove it unless you give me the science that shows it. If you say something is endangered, or if you say something has gone down, then you should have a number that proves that is true. So this student is going to probably need to do more research, okay, for this section of their paper. And then moving on to the next part, the third paragraph, here's going to be that promising idea or solution-based thing, okay? In which case they're going to start giving data that shows improvement has happened or that this solution can work. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the problem data should be very centralized. Like I said, coastal habitats in Tampa Bay specifically. However, you can be a little bit more open when you're talking about the solution. So for instance, let's say, hypothetically, that coastal habitats in Tampa Bay, those mangroves are disappearing off our shorelines. And here's the data that shows that the number of mangroves has gone down percentage-wise over a 10-year period. When we're talking about the solution or how to fix that, we can take good ideas from other places. So maybe we look at the mangrove population in another part of the world, let's say off the coast of Australia or something like that. And as we're looking at mangroves in another part of the world, we can see what solutions they applied to their problem situation and then apply it to our situation. So in other words, you can take solutions from other places. It doesn't have to be a solution from Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has the problem. If they had the solution, they might have enacted it already. But we can say, well, this solution, which worked, off the coast of South America and brought their mangroves back, we can then apply that same solution here. And here's the data that shows that this solution worked over there. And so perhaps if we try that here, it will fix our mangrove problem too. So the solution-based concept can come from other areas if it could hypothetically also work for Tampa Bay. The conclusion paragraph is going to wrap up everything. The conclusion should be a review. Don't introduce new information to conclusion. Okay, it's just to reaffirm the ideas one more time. And then at the end, you're going to have your references. Again, there's going to be at least 2 sources required for this paper. One of those has to come from the database. If you want them all to come from the database, that's fine. But at least one has to, because now we're getting into the practice of using this tool that as a college student, no matter what college you go to, you're going to be expected to know how to do this. So get that practice in now. Again, if you struggle with any parts of this process, you can always go to tutoring. You can go to tutoring just to get research help. You can go to tutoring for help with your outline. You don't have to take them a finished paper. You can go to tutoring with nothing and say, here's my assignment. I'm really stuck. How do I get started? And that tutor will help you just to get going. They will help you with anything you need. And so will I, of course. If you email me, let me know. If you want to do an office appointment, I'm open to that as well. Okay, so this is just an overview discussion of your paper and upcoming outline. And we're going to be building this in parts. So don't jump right into the outline assignment first thing. We're going to slowly construct this week by week until we get to a final product.